Hi, my name is Kathryn Creedy. I am the editor of Future Aviation Aerospace Workforce News, and we're here today to talk about workforce challenges in the business aviation industry. I want to introduce our panel. Right beside me is Nick Guida. He is founder of Tamarack Aerospace and invented the Atlas load alleviation system, which saves 33% on fuel. His technology is now on 150 citations worldwide. He was a designated engineering rep with the FAA, ensuring compliance in structures, loads, damage, tolerance, and fatigue. His CV sports such assignments as Boeing, Pilatus, Aviate, Eclipse, and Quest aircraft. Next to him is Beth Cook, Chief Human Resources Officer with JSSI. It is her job to develop the winning people strategy, so we're going to learn a lot from her. Over 20 years of leading and shaping high-performing culture in a diverse and global environment, that experience includes both Honeywell and BP's Oil Americas unit. Next to her is Dawit Lemma, CEO of Krimson Aviation, an aviation supply services company. He is a Swiss citizen, but now has returned to his Ethiopian origins and travels widely in Africa. A graduate of Purdue and Basel Business College, Dawit holds an AP license, commercial licenses from FAA, South Africa, EASA, and he has 20 years experience on 4 continents. Leading such companies as TAG Aviation, Emirates, MAF, and Ethiopian Airlines. He is also vice president of the African Business Aviation Association in Ethiopia. Finally, there's Joe Damato, senior vice president of education, training, and workforce development. She has been with NBAA since 2001, having led the professional development program team, sustainability accreditation, on-demand education, scholarships, student outreach, and diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. So we have a panel of experts here, and I'm very pleased to welcome them to UAS. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you.
Well, we're going to have a series of a few questions and that are plaguing the airline industry, or rather the business aviation industry. So what is your company doing for recruitment, retention, and expanding diversity? Why don't we start with you, Nick?
Well, we live in a small town in North Idaho, so it's difficult to have a talent base there, and so we have to recruit. And because of our small town, we are faced with some of the challenges that people of experience levels don't necessarily want to move to a small town if their kids are already enrolled in school. It's challenging. Some of the COVID's helped because we can now work from a distance, and that has helped a lot. But majority, when you do technology like ours, the collaborative effect of everyone being in the same room or at least the same city is very important. But because it's a small town, we are blessed with having I was telling you earlier, an organization called ACES that's run by a gentleman that has been training pilots and A&P mechanics starting middle school. So we kind of home grow our own talent. We've interned a lot of them. We've actually hired a few of them. So we have to look around all the areas and promote our Sandpoint, Idaho as a beautiful place to live with a lot of outdoor activities. And we try to bring those type of people and experience in. But it is it's a small town, and it's we have Quest Aviation, well, Istaher now is there, Aeroset is near. So we do have a little culture of aviation that continues to grow, and it's reached a critical mass that's able to attract people in North Idaho now.
What I love about that program is that it keeps the kids at home.
It does,
It provides opportunities in their own hometown.
That's
Beth,
right.
What about you?
For us, it really starts with infrastructure. So not only are we looking externally, but we want to make sure once we do some talent acquisition, we have a really great place for them to kind of grow their careers. So once we make sure our infrastructure is in place, which I could speak to that a little bit later, it's really about the power of our employees and networking. So not only leveraging tools such as like social media, but really making sure that we're using our employees as that like standard of like, who do you know? And also too, and then they're usually a part of different associations and things like that. So really making sure we have that broader reach to stay within the industry. And then we also have quite a few roles that are outside of the aviation industry as well. So really making sure that we're getting that diversity of experience to come in where we need that aviation industry. We really use that power of networking. Where we're looking for a more industry agnostic, we really try to do a little broader reach. So working on that.
I love that because using your own workforce to recruit, that says a lot about the company.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So Dawit, tell me about your efforts. Crimson Aviation.
Yeah, I think we have a major challenge because business aviation is not as common or well known in the rest of the world, in Africa as it is in the rest of the world. So finding talent is very, very challenging for us. But I think we're lucky enough that our home base in Addis Ababa, Ethiopian Airlines, is across the street. So one of the first things that we try and do is, of course, recruit just those who have aviation experience. That's the first layer. And then we have to train them. We have to, the mind shift or the paradigm shift and to letting them know the difference between what business and general aviation is and commercial airlines. Outside of that, I think I've had to, since the very beginning, leverage, like you said, my network, the associations that I'm part of, to let people know that there is a company like Krimson that is focused purely on business and general aviation. And then from there, I think I've worked very hard on developing our brand. And that's very important, I think. You want people to want to come work for you. And not because yes, it's a great company, but like you said, the employees are talking about how great of a boss I am, how they love to come to work for me. And I think that comes from the fact that I've always tried my very best to treat our team members and our employees as humans first, then employees next. And that has now helped us actually develop a culture where people want to come work for us.
I love that because if you treat your employees well, they'll treat everybody else well, and it just rolls downhill, and it's always success. So, Joe, you have been in talent management practically your whole time at NBAA. One of the things that you could speak of is attracting talent to association management, or talk about what NBAA does to create a pipeline for itself.
Yeah, well, I'll actually take it broader than that. I mean, we're invested in ourselves, of course. We are looking for the best and brightest who want to work at NBAA, but also what can we do for the industry, for our members? And so from a broad standpoint, of course, it's how do we attract people to aviation? Let's get them heads up in aviation first, and then we're going to need to convert them over to business aviation. So from that very high level, of course, we've had representatives on the Women in Aviation Advisory Board, the Youth Access to American Jobs, to aviation jobs across America, and both of those, I know you know well, have just submitted their recommendations this calendar year. When we bring that down, that lens down a little more towards us in business aviation, it's what we're doing across all of our media channels. Mm-hmm. So our student edition of our Insider is out this week. We have news hours. We're on TikTok now. We have our young professionals, our Yo Pros, doing a great job on Instagram and honoring the 40 under 40 this week. And so now we're starting to say, okay, you're a young person interested in aviation. Let's now focus on how can we get you to focus on business aviation. And then finally, tactically here, I have over 300 students registered this week at NBAA BACE, representing 57 institutions. We've tried to do personal outreach to all of them. And on Thursday, we have our annual Collegiate Connect Day. We have an amazing program for them, starting with the Deputy Administrator, Brad Mims, doing the welcome remarks, all the way through talking about their mental wellness and how we want to invest in them now before they even work in our industry to care for them throughout. So, Kathryn, this is my favorite topic, but I'm so excited that at every level we're trying to make sure we are doing everything we can for humans who want to be business aviation professionals.
And of course, that was one of the big recommendations of the task force, was to have a student track during all these major aviation conferences, because they can network, which is the key to success, but also they can learn much more about the industry, and they can know that it's not just an airline pilot you're going for. So that's great. So why don't we start with you, Joe, and ask, what are the top 3 challenges you face and your solutions?
In workforce?
Yeah, in
Okay,
workforce.
so we call it a 3-legged stool. So thank you for the nice setup. And this is through the efforts of the Business Aviation Management Committee and the work of Dr. Chris Broyhill, and just studying from our members what's important for that retention, for that stickiness. And we know there are 3 pieces to the puzzle to attract, retain, and develop. Yes, we need to have the competitive compensation and benefits. No question. And never have we been facing a more competitive time with some other parts of the aviation industry being very attractive alternatives to you, especially mid-career if you're thinking about a change. So compensation and benefits. Second, the work-life balance. And I want to clarify, I'm not just talking about the working mom who's trying to figure out, but the fact that we are very focused on caregivers, and that all of us, we want to exist outside of who we are at work and be able to take care of those responsibilities, whatever they are. But if you don't have a work-life balance, your compensation and benefits are only going to keep you for so long.
Right.
But those 2 things are not enough. It's your leadership culture. And it has to be where you're at. Do your personal values align with the values of the organization you've chosen to invest a large part of your awake time with? And if those are the challenges, but for organizations who can focus on those 3 things and get it right, that stool is going to stay steady, and we're going to attract, retain, develop, and grow our future leaders.
Dawit, what do you have to?
Yeah, I think just like Joe, I think competition and compensation is probably one of the most difficult challenges that we have, and we try to balance that out with, for me, compensation is not just salaries. It's creating an opportunity for our team members to really grow, whether it's salaries and education programs, insurance, really making sure that they're comfortable in their. They don't have to worry about putting food on the table, the kids, their families. I think that settles the mind first. Second, I think I think it's a problem we all have. I know we're very diversity driven. I think my dad, when I first started Krimson 7 years ago, my dad told me to hire women, and that's been a challenge. Just because there are not that many qualified women in business aviation specifically, and even aviation. And then lastly, I think, the solution to that is that, again, I've gone out to my network, and instead of looking for women in aviation, we're recruiting women and turning them into aviation experts. And actually, some of my best employees are actually women. So my dad was right. And then the last issue we have, I think, stems around culture. What you said about culture. We have high turnover, and it's usually, we notice that it's those that have not bought into our corporate culture. One of my mentors said that people use the word family loosely in the work environment. Well, we're not a family. We're a community, and what we've tried to develop is a community. And those that don't fit into that community, of course, have left, or we've had to let them go. And some of our best people have left. So I think recruiting people and retaining people from a experience and technical level, but finding the right people that fit into your culture is very important. So in our recruitment now, we don't only look at the technical skills, we don't only look at just the resume. We try and understand the person and what drives them to be a human being first, before we retain them.
Very good. Beth?
Yes, again, I think I would echo a lot of those, but just some new things to add so we don't repeat. But flexibility, again, I think the work-life balance is really important, and having that flexibility and trying to get that balance where we have some roles that you can actually do from home, but then you have that sense of belonging and making sure people are feeling a part of something. And so really trying to manage that balance of how do you create that flexibility, because that's your competition, right? Your competition is like 100% remote. You can work from wherever. And so really trying to have that nice balance of really attracting that top talent in those right areas. And then I would just say in general diversity, right? So again, it goes back to culture, it goes back to leadership of just making sure that when you make some headways around getting that diverse talent, that your culture is set up for success to really kind of build upon that to retain some of those employees. So those are the things that we focus on.
Great. Nick? Your turn.
Yeah, so I touched on it earlier, just the amount of people in our town is so small that we have to home grow people or bring them in. So our biggest challenge is the talent pool is small of employees or people that are in the workforce, and then even smaller subset of that are the people that are in aviation. So we have to do a lot of training when we bring someone in. And it's, for us, Idaho is an interesting place because the people that move there, that want to be there, are independent thinkers. So the attitude is often very great on these people, and it's just taking that attitude and turning them into airplane people. So, but our biggest challenge is just there's not many people there. And then, as I mentioned, when you're going to move a family there, if everyone in the family's not into the move, it's very difficult. The number one thing when people move is if they're predetermined to make that work, a move like that, then they stay. And if it's just too big of a step going from a big town where there's a mall, into a little town where there's no mall, it's just hard for a lot of families. So that's a big challenge for us.
When we were thinking of locating, we defined the acceptable location as someplace with a target, because we did not have a target in Bennington, Vermont. Culture is obviously one of our biggest challenges, and the Women in Aviation Advisory Board actually put that as the number one issue related to attracting kids to aviation jobs, and especially attracting women and diversifying our workplace. So what would you recommend, or what do you do, and what do you recommend to the industry to enhance the culture, to enhance that sense of belonging, to enhance that sense of community, to enhance that sense that I want to stay with this company? So let's start with you, Nick.
Yeah, so it does start at the top. I mean, the company was founded with, if you want to say family values. I have 3 daughters, and they grew up knowing that they could do anything probably better than a man. So, it starts from there, and I think it goes down, and my employees all understand that I love them and I want them to prosper, and that it really is like a family, and we all know each other, in the same community, play baseball together. It's such a small place, as I mentioned many times, that it is already a community. So the culture's just built in, and then of course achieving and joy comes from progress and accomplishment, and so everyone at our small company really gets to put their stamp of approval and their heart into everything they do, and it maintains a high level of value for them, and they want to stay. So that's generally our culture. We don't have a very diverse environment also, right?
Also in Idaho.
Yeah, in Idaho, northern Idaho, it's very homogeneous, but we still do what we can to help the people in the community work at our location through training and things like that. So
now, how many employees do you have?
we have 32 right now.
Okay, so this is a small company. Beth has a large company. So let's talk culture at a large company, and what's the secret sauce?
Absolutely. So we're about 500, and we've literally grown due to some acquisitions. Literally, the last year doubled in size. And so big things that we're really focusing on is making sure we're integrating those cultures, from, again, you have different companies with different values. And so you really want to make sure everyone feels like one cohesive family, and we all are going out to the marketplace with a single offering. And again, to echo, it really starts from the top. If your leadership role model and they set expectations that this is what's expected and this is how they lead is by inclusive listening, active listening, I think is a big deficit across leadership of just being able to take in ideas, ask people questions, listening for the quietest voice in the room and things like that. I think that's very important. And then setting those expectations and accountability across that leadership at all level. I also think is creating career opportunities. So you really have to make sure your infrastructure is in place. So when you get this diverse talent and you are attracting them through your network, you're really taking a look at, what opportunities, how can I grow in this organization? So is it that I just know somebody and they like me and I've gotten opportunities and they just continue to give me promotions? Or do I actually get an open post and have to go for it? And really making it a fair and equitable place of you can go for it, but you're one of many to beat, right? And so it really becomes a competition, but everyone has an opportunity to go for it. And so really creating that space. I also think just really making sure that you have sponsorship, in education. So sponsorship is, again, really getting those leaders to see the talent, the diverse talent at all levels and saying, let's get you exposure. Let me advocate for you when you're not in the room. I saw you work on this project. Great job. And really recognizing that throughout the culture. And then I think the final thing is just educating on just basic things like, unconscious bias and micro inequities. I think there's a lot of really good people out there that have good intent, but we're all built with biases, and it's just how we've lived, how we've grown up, how we've, learned. And so it's just slowing down when you're making a decision so that you can make sure that it's a really inclusive place for people to grow and learn. And you're not making assumptions based off of, again, like if a woman wants to start a family, if she's in sales, can she not travel now? And just making those assumptions, right? Or can it look different? And so really kind of challenging yourself of how do we do this job successfully, but it might be different, but it can still be successful. So those are examples, but that's kind of what we're focusing on, or really like challenging the diversity and inclusion environment with attracting that top talent.
Dawit, how many employees in your company?
We have 16 employees and 40 agents across the continent. And I think, just to echo what's already been said, it starts with leadership. But personally, I believe that leadership is service. To be a leader is to be a servant. And that's where it really starts with the culture. And that goes from setting the example, picking up the trash, to the way you speak to your team members, the way you recognize them, giving them the attention that they require, but being purposeful about it. Not haphazard, actually being more proactive about, putting yourself in their shoes, and empathy, for example. And then that has also kind of led into something, we have something called, everybody has their mission, vision, and values, but we have those, but we've combined it and called it the Crimson Way. Mm-hmm. And if there's behavior that is outside of those, what we've set for our culture, we call people out. I know that's not it's negative reinforcement, but this is such a sensitive topic, especially in Africa, where, for example, women do not have the respect and rights that they do in the rest of the world. We definitely we make sure that our team members understand that this is not the Crimson Way, and please redirect your behavior towards the Crimson Way. And finally, I just go back to, it's all about being a human being. Lead by example. The golden rule: do unto others as you want done to yourself. And people pick up on that. And also from a personal perspective, I also purposely try to share my experiences. I've lived all over the world. I speak 3 languages. So I try and tell stories. I tell stories instead of telling my employees, so they kind of understand. I tell them about when I was in Afghanistan or in Switzerland or in the UAS, to give them an idea that this is a big world. Mm-hmm. And sharing my personal experiences with them gives them perspective and exposure, even though they've never left the country or the continent. So that's what we try and do.
Joe, we've gone from 2 small companies to a big company, now an industry. Yeah. So that's a huge challenge for us because we are a very, very male-dominated industry. What are your challenges to addressing the culture?
Yeah. So in this case, I think your last question was NBAA, and I took it broad. and now you're asking me broad, but I'd like to bring it back to NBAA because I wouldn't be somewhere for 21 years of my life if it wasn't a place that I felt was treating me like the unique individual human that I am. And I think it's so important that for anyone that comes into any organization, they need to be seen, they need to be heard, they need to be valued, they need to feel that they are the unique individual who they are outside of work when they are at work. And the company needs to develop sponsorship, allyship, mentorship, that psychologically safe space that allows them to grow, because that's where your introverts are going to find the space for their voice. That's where you're creating the space for them. That's where we get to diversity of thought. But it's so intentional, and it does have to start at the top. I'm really proud at NBAA, we wear our core values. Every employee knows them. We give examples of them every day. There are 4 of them. There is our culture of care for each other. And if you've seen if you've at least 2 of us interacting with each other, I hope you observe a culture of care for each other as human beings. If you're enjoying this week, we deliver excellence. And we want to be a team to deliver excellence. It doesn't rest on just one person's shoulders to make that happen. We lead from any seat. Every member of NBAA's team is empowered to lead, to be a decision maker here and in any other role of their job. And they demonstrate that for us constantly, and it's not just by age or tenure. It's wherever you sit. We want you to be a leader, even if it's not in your title. And then we're really proud of the community we're creating. And so we work with so many volunteers at NBAA, and we do try to have our core values reflected by our volunteers who are representing our brand, and we find that they want to embody them within their volunteer work, and then that gets spread out to within their own organizations. So we want to model, but we're learning and observing and reflecting the industry as well and the best practices. So it's just this beautiful synergy.
It's wonderful. I think our problems are all solved by you guys. So one of the places we never hear from is the HR department. We're talking about we need to do this, we need to do that, we have all these big visions and big plans to attract the next generation. But what would you say to your colleagues in any industry on building an inclusive workforce, building a culture that really delivers for the employee from the human resources point of view? I mean, what's the infrastructure that you need there?
Yeah, to me, I think really human resources needs to be a business partner. So whatever business you're in, you need to understand the business in which you're serving, the business in which, like, if it's a nonprofit, what community are we serving? If it's for profit, how do we make our money? And you really got to dive in and learn the business. And then to me, as just an HR industry, you really need to partner and coach the leaders, right? And I think leaders at all levels, I think often we focus on the executives, which again, it does start at the top. But I think you can't ignore those first level leaders, the mid-level leaders, because that's where they're hungry, that's where they're learning. And leaders at all levels touch every single employee across the organization. So we've all heard the stat of people don't often leave jobs or companies, they leave leaders. And so really, if you start with that coaching, you can really make a difference. And I think so as an HR professional, you really need to partner with your business, partner with a leader. What are your problems? How can we be proactive in helping you come up with creative solutions to develop your talent through stretch assignments, through exposure, through what have you? How do we set up an infrastructure to make it make sense? So again, recognition throughout. How do we build that culture of recognition? And it starts with the leader, And so I think really the key is partnership, right? And making sure you're hungry to learn the business in which you're serving. And again, going back to that service kind of mindset, I think that's the key.
Dawit, we've heard, we pretty much know what's going on in Europe and the Americas on workforce challenges and the workforce shortages. Is it the same as you travel around Africa? What do you and your colleagues discuss when talking about workforce challenges?
I think the biggest challenge is the understanding of what business aviation is and general aviation. I mean, airlines, they don't have challenges because everybody knows what an airline is. They want to be a pilot. They want to be a mechanic. They want to be around airplanes. They want to be at the airport. The biggest challenge we face is explaining to someone or recruiting people to be in business aviation. You have kind of two ends of the spectrum where the perception is business aviation is the rich people, the government officials, flying around in their private jets, and then on the other end, the crop duster in their 172 general aviation. So it's about creating a paradigm shift and creating an understanding of what really is aviation. But luckily, I've seen there's so many efforts going on, not just our own, but women in aviation is really becoming more active, and there really is a push to get more women into the industry. And to be perfectly honest, D&I, diversity has become such a buzzword all over the world, right? It's a buzzword, and everybody's focusing on it as a problem. But I see it as a solution to the workforce challenge. Mm-hmm. If we recruited more women and more minorities, we're tapping into a larger pool. Everybody's focusing on the talent pool that currently is licensed or has experience. Well, there's a lot of people out there who don't even know about aviation. And I think that starts with educating and going out to high schools and every chance I get to speak to young kids about aviation, whether that's in a formal setting at a high school or a middle school, or at a birthday party with because my sons always love to our dad is a pilot, and then other kids come and I'm like, well, I'm no longer a pilot, but this is what what I do. And their first perception is like, oh, which airline do you fly for? I'm like, no, I never flew a commercial airline. I flew King Airs and PC-12s. And they're like, what's that?
Yeah.
And it's all about being very self-aware, about using every second you can, every opportunity you get to promote the industry in a region or a continent where the perception is the like I said, it's two ends of a very negative spectrum. But that's me personally. But like I said, also we have wonderful associations such as Women in Aviation, the African Business Aviation Association, where we're again being very purposeful about telling the right story so that people understand, because unfortunately perception is reality, and perception currently of business and general aviation is not that great. So we have to create that paradigm shift, and that comes from professional level, but also on a personal level. Whenever you get an opportunity to promote or to educate or create awareness with young kids, I think that's the solution going forward. And I think that's applicable not just in Africa, but the rest of the world as well.
I absolutely agree with that. I think one of our problems is that we don't tell the full story of business aviation. If people knew how often pilots volunteered their aircraft and their time and their money to rescue people after a hurricane, or take puppies from one end of the country to the other, or our Angel flight in business aviation, where they take people who need to get medical services that they can't get in their hometown, and fly them across their country so they can access the top in the world. So this is a story that needs to continue to be told. I want to ask you guys, I'm a great believer in certifications as a method of creating a pipeline. So in middle school and high school, we talk to kids about, getting a pilot's license or an A&P license, or somehow getting into aviation and providing them with the information at the middle and high school levels. I met two young women here at NBAA from Aviation High School on your collegiate day, and I called them the Daring Duo, and I ended up doing a story for Aviation for Girls on them. One graduated from Aviation High School and got a full ride to Cornell, and the other is working for FedEx and leveraging their benefits in order to get their education. So to me, when I heard her plan, I thought that's the way to do it, is do stackable credentials, get certificated, and then leverage your employee benefits. For big corporations, at least, they all have education benefits. So what is, for small companies, what does that mean for you? When it comes to benefits and saying we want to promote you during your career by educating you and doing this, how is that for you, and you, Nick?
Well, for a small company like ours, I mentioned the ACES program that's in Sandpoint, and those are the kids go through a program through middle school all the way through high school, and they can actually graduate with some college credits. So there is a stackable certificates. And then many of them go on to flight training also, so that's obvious, as you know. And then AMP school is another certificate. And then once we bring them into the company, I mean, it's not a big company, but we have continuing education, just like it's not really a certificate, but just continuing education and for our engineers and our mechanics and everybody. Even for our CPA, they have to maintain that. So, that is a premise, and I don't know, in a small company like ours, there's not a huge pathway to the higher levels of the company really right now until we grow. So there isn't that opportunity, but those are the ones that we use.
Yeah, that's great. Beth, for a large company, obviously the education benefits are there. Does JSSI have an attitude that it's no longer college one and done, and that it's a continuing education throughout the career so that they can keep up with the latest technology and do the best job they can for the company?
I would say yes, but I would also say that I always kind of go with the 70-20-10 rule, where 70% you get experience, right? On the job you're learning. So I think there are roles in which certifications, you need them. They're required. There's certain degrees that you need, absolutely. But I think, again, really thinking about how you can leverage transferable skills of just learning on the job, So the 70% is really on the job, the 20% is exposure, and the 10% is really academics. Because I think a lot of times we go out and we learn something, we take a class, but if we don't get to apply it, we don't get to use it, right? And so you really need to make sure it makes sense. I would also say just another addition to continue to develop the workforce is really going back to that transferable skills, because I think it's great that we focus on kind of that college age and kids age, but for us to see that diversity make a difference all the way through the pipeline, we really need to hit the middle market as well. And so what can we do to get people excited right there? I like how you said earlier in the presentation around talking about, I just go find really talented, smart, capable people, and we can train them. And whether it's sitting for a certification or taking them on the job or taking them into a customer's site or something like that. So really looking for those transferable skills that you just see the hungry, you see the appetite, and then you can kind of leverage that and move that on. So I think then we'll see that diversity and that talent development through the organization quicker, as well as building the younger pipeline as well.
So, Joe, you kind of invented stackable certifications.
Sure. No.
So you've got a huge program of certifications that keeps people professionals and contributes to their skill sets. So talk about how important that is to have that continuing education throughout the career.
Yeah. I'm learning obsessed. I always want to pick up something new. I hope it's going to help me stay sharp. And so I think other people want to do the same thing. I think what I'll say is over the course of the last 2 years, and especially once we entered into the second quarter of 2020, the number one thing we observed at NBAA was an interest for an individual to invest in themselves. And it hasn't slowed down. And so just because their only option was, on-demand education, whether it was synchronous or asynchronous learning, everyone was looking for what can I do to elevate my professionalism, my development. Our mission on the team that I get to lead is when we're considering a new project, will this help an individual ascend in their business aviation career? It's a yes/no question. If we can answer yes, it's likely worth our doing. If it's a no, maybe we have to go back and look at it from a different angle. But if you recall, all of us, it used to be, in my opinion, your options were, do you go for another rating? Do you go and get another degree? Which is it going to be? Are you going to invest in the time for a master's degree? Okay, that's a lot of time and money, and as a full-time working adult, very difficult to do. Do you get another rating? That's a lot of time and money and to invest as well. And then credentialing just sort of appeared more accessible to us in aviation. Mm-hmm. I would like to enhance my safety skills. Is there safety education I can do? And is it short Is it something I can apply right away? Is it stackable? Those are the things where we're able to say, what do you want to learn? How can you learn it in 6 weeks? How can this work into your life? Can it be on demand? Leverage the technology and grow. And then when you're done shopping, put something else in your cart. What else do you need? Financial management for a non-financial manager. You can pick that off the shelf. I mean, you dream it, it probably exists. And if you think we need to build it, let me know and I'll talk to the team.
Well, that's great. I think we need to wrap up now, but I think this panel has given us lots of ideas